a lot of educators in the room, and being a student once upon a time myself, I know that after lunch is the worst possible time to be in front of the room, right? So you either have to be really, really funny or say really smart things. So you guys are in trouble. I don't have either of those bags of tricks. I will tell you a little bit about my life story, and I will tell you a little bit about Bitwise Industries. But if anybody sees me sort of going off on tangents and talking for too long, just wave me down, and I'll take the cue. It'll be just fine. Before I came up here, I heard somebody say, "You're a lot of fun to look at." It was one of my table mates, so I'm not going to point fingers. She was like, the purple hair and the bright shoes, and I was like, this is the most dressed up I've been since prom. What is the deal? Not joking. I have an unconventional look, and sometimes people comment on it, but I think that what you'll hear through not just my life story, but also what Bitwise Industries does and what we're attempting to do in the world is that it is critical that we stay relatable to the people that we're trying to serve. And so certainly I could get up here and I could be wearing my Banana Republic and my heels, and I could look like a CEO, but to me, when I speak to students and when I speak to educators, what they see and what I hope you also see are the same people that you in your everyday jobs are looking to serve. And so I'm going to tell you my life story, and what the neat thing about it is that it's a story of, I hope, triumph and success. But I think what you're going to hear through that these are the people that you see and reach out to every single day. And so this is less about me and more about a population of people. And if we remember that through this whole narrative, then we will all, I hope, be better for that and go out and into the world, do our jobs a little bit better, maybe differently, in order to reach those people. So to begin with, my name is Irma Olwin Jr. That's a real thing. It's on my birth certificate and on my passport. I didn't just add it there because it's fun. I do get a lot of comments about, hey, juniors are only supposed to be men. And I said, the only thing I know for sure is that I'm a junior and not a man. Don't know how else to help you with that piece of information. So that's not a joke. I really am a junior. My mom has the exact same name as I do, first, middle, and last, and she would like nothing to do with this conference. So any questions or inquiries you have after, please direct them to me, not to my mom. She's not interested. I grew up in a small town called Carruthers. Raise your hand if you know where Carruthers is. Keep your hand up if you've been to the fair in Carruthers, which is in 2 weeks. Keep your hand further up if you have had a corn dog at that fair. Okay, you guys with your hands up, we can be friends. The rest of you, out again. Really excited about our fair. It really is in 2 weeks. I think I am their best advertisement. I don't go anywhere without talking about those corn dogs. I have a petition to add a corn dog emoji to the iPhone. So please sign it, it's on Twitter. So anyway, I grew up in Carruthers, California. Go Blue, I am a Raider. I see you, with the blue shirt on in the C. That is my hometown from kindergarten through senior year of high school. And grew up in the same way that people in Carruthers grow up, right? So I am not a different story from that. But I ended up in a different place, and that's why telling my story becomes critically important, because me and my ability right now to have this microphone is different from the way that my peers ended up. And so I grew up, my very first job, I come from a family of farm laborers. They were farm laborers their entire lives. I got a taste of that when I was very young. My first job when I was 6 years old was rolling raisins. In a place like Carruthers, and it's not just Carruthers, right? We're talking about Fowler, we're talking about Riverdale, we're talking about Layton, we're talking about Kingsburg, Madera, Mendota, all of the rural towns. There are two factions in places like those. There are the folks who own the ag land and who manage and work that land, and then there are the laborers who work for those people. I was squarely in the latter camp, and so was my family. And that is not meant to set the stage for a really sad song. This is meant to illustrate that the vast majority of people in the Central Valley have either the exact same story that I do in terms of the circumstances that I grew up in, or are related to those very same people, right? So raise your hand if you yourself, or a cousin, or an aunt, or somebody in your relatively close family has worked in the fields. Massive, massive number of people. Raise your hand if any of those people that you know own a company, or a CEO of a company, or own a 250,000 square feet in downtown Fresno.
Fine out of you.
That is the tragedy, okay? The tragedy is not that my family were field laborers. The tragedy is that the fact that I'm standing here is a statistical anomaly. And so I want to talk about that, and I'm going to, I hope, give credit where credit is due and sort of point out, I have the benefit of hindsight. I know I'm able to look back in the 37 years of my life and sort of deconstruct what made that work. Why did I end up with as the person with the microphone? And I think we can sort of pick that apart. And if we can successfully pick that apart, then we can be more deliberate about those pieces, and they don't have to be accidents anymore, right? So that's the message. That's what I'm hoping to get across. I will start, like I said, with my story in Carruthers as a farm laborer. When you grow up that way, and you know this better maybe even than I do, you don't have in your head this future of I'm going to go to college, or I'm going to own a company, or I'm going to really anything. What you know is what's around you, and what's around you is a life of work. Not that I don't work, I work really hard. But that's what you know, and so you really don't see anything different for yourself, right? And so if you don't aim super high, you're probably not going to get super high, and that is the message here. So when I grew up, I, like the folks that I grew up with, had a very specific non-vision for my life, and that was, if I work really hard, I'm going to get a job at Clevenger's or Ace Hardware, Subway, or whatever the local gas station is, and I'm going to spend 4, 5, 7 years there, and I'm going to be a manager, and if I become management, I will have the success story of being able to pay all of my bills in the same month. That is what the vision for my life was, and it was shared across all of my peer group. Being able to pay all of your bills in the same month is not that common in rural towns like Carruthers and Fowler and Layton and Riverdale, right? Being able to pay all of your bills in the same month is what our parents struggled with and what we hope to overcome. So how did I end up here? There was a day I think I was 15 or 16 years old. I was a junior in high school, and there was an announcement over the loudspeaker that said that if you want to take the PSAT, that you should excuse yourself from class and go to the cafeteria, and you would be there for the rest of the day. I didn't know what the PSAT was. I didn't know that it would end up being the single most important test I've ever taken in my entire existence. What I heard and what my 15-year-old brain heard was, if you want to be out of class for half a day, go to the cafeteria now. And so I went, my 15-year-old self went. I was a good student, right? So I learned really early on that if I'm a good student, I get in less trouble. That's it. And so I did well on the test. And what ended up happening, sort of serendipitously, is that the counselor then at my high school, raise your hand if you're a counselor, have been a counselor. Okay, that's a lot of you. The counselor then at my high school changed my life. And without my knowledge, sent my grades to what I would learn was the National Scholarship Foundation. So he sent all of my transcripts and my extracurriculars, and he wrote a really nice letter, and he was like, this is somebody you should pay attention to, and that, together with my scores, resulted in a bunch of marketing mail being sent to my house from colleges. I remember the mailbox starting to become crowded with all of this college fiscal mail. And it was really surprising to me because I didn't remember ever asking for that to show up. And I also couldn't, it was really in that moment, you have to understand, put yourself in my position. I'm 15 or 16 years old, and suddenly I'm getting mail from the University of Wisconsin and from UCLA and from all of these places. And it's their normal marketing package, but to me it was a really big deal because it was the first time in my life when I thought, oh shoot. Shit. Somebody is interested in me going to college, right? Somebody out in the world, whomever's putting these mailers together, is interested in me going to college. And I was very excited about that. It was full color, glossy, it was a big deal to me. And the mail just kept coming. It was piling up, and so I ended up getting a letter from St. Mary's University in Southern California, and I'm going to paraphrase it. Roughly said, "Dear Irma, even though you don't know anything about tennis, if you come and play tennis for us at our school, we'll give you $700 a semester." I want to emphasize how much I don't know about tennis. because, like, you guys are locals, like, you know Carruthers, you know what a powerful tennis program we have. Like, it's life-changing, you know? And to this very day, I'm 37, I still swing a tennis racket like a softball bat. And so that was a surprising letter to get. But nonetheless, I take the letter and I take it to my mom and dad. I'm like, Mom and Dad, hear me out. Here's a letter, they're gonna give me some cash, I'm gonna go to school at this place called St. Mary's, I'm not Catholic, it doesn't matter. And they were like, you know, excited for me on one hand because I'd received this really monumental, like, you know, seminal sort of moment in time, like this letter, and they were like, but maybe you should just, you know, just to do your homework, like, check to see how much it costs to go to school there. And so that dream went away. Because $700 wasn't gonna do it. But the mail kept coming, and I ended up getting a letter from USC. And it had a Trojan on the cover, and, like, I'm telling you, I really wanted one of those helmets. And it was like, paraphrasing once again, Dear Irma, you're super good with your grades and stuff. Like, here's I think it was $10,000 a semester to come, if you come and go to school and be a Trojan. And I was like, this is it, dudes. Like, I am going to be a Trojan, I'm getting a helmet, I look super good in red and gold. Like, this decision is made. Mom and Dad, hear me out. And they're like, super great for you. And by this time, though, like, they had seen all the mail, and they were starting to get a little bit worried. Because, like, how do you tell your kid that $10,000 is not gonna do it? Like, how do you tell them, you still can't go to school there, $10,000 when it costs $24,000 a semester to go, we're never gonna bridge that gap, I'm sorry. You know, like, and so they're starting to get kind of fearful that they're gonna have to tell me this, and I can kind of see it in their eyes, but I'm like, whatever, I'm 16, I'm going, you know? And, but they let me down easy. They're like, listen, we don't wanna say it quite like this, but college is for people who have money. That's for other people, like the people who, like, own the farms and who manage the farms, those are the ones, roughly, who go to college. Difficult moment when you're 16, right? Not super easy to digest, probably much more difficult as a parent to have to deliver that news. But the mail kept coming. Ended up sort of shortcut sort of that process and the emotional moment that it was for my family. I ended up with a couple of full ride scholarship offers. Which I thought was just amazing, and I just couldn't believe it, and there were tears all the way around, and I was like, Mom and Dad, hear me out. The University of Toledo in Ohio is saying they're gonna give me a full ride scholarship, and I can live in the dorm, and I don't care, I will eat top ramen for 6 years. And it was like this thing, it was one of the heaviest moments of probably my existence when they looked me in the eye and they said, we're really excited for you and we're really proud, but to get from Fresno, California to Toledo, Ohio is 2,700 miles. We don't know anyone who has a car that's going to make it that far. And so in order to accept this scholarship, like in the letter it said you have to be physically present for orientation. Orientation was going to be in Toledo, Ohio. Toledo, Ohio is 2,700 miles. We had a problem on our hands, right? And so it was what you, I hope, are recognizing from this story is that the students that you all are out to serve have opportunities in front of them, and there is a way. A lot of them are very scrappy and ambitious, and they're going to take opportunities by the neck and just hold on. But sometimes it's something as stupid as a bus ticket that's going to stop them from being able to achieve that dream. And so that was where I sat. I was 16 years old, and I rounded up my family, and we spent the summer recycling cans. We would go around on the bed of a pickup truck, jump off, grab the cans and bottles that we would see on the side of the road, throw them into the back of the truck, and we recycled them, and I was able to buy a Greyhound ticket and spend 62 hours riding from Fresno, California, the 2,700 miles to Toledo, Ohio to show up for orientation. And so I get off of the bus, right? So now we're here, and I'm like my new life has begun. I'm in Ohio. Where are all the brown people? Like, you're thinking you get off of like a Greyhound bus, and similar to Fresno, you walk across the street and buy a decent taco. Not gonna happen in Toledo, okay? So that was new. There was a bit of a culture shock for me, but I show up anyway, and I'm like, this is fine. I can get used to this sea of not very diverse like culture. I can get used to this. I'll make my own tacos, right? And I go to orientation, and the lady at the counter, she's like, okay, name? And I'm like, Irma. Last name, Ogin? She's like, what? And she's like, okay, so I have you here. You don't have a major declared, so I'm gonna need to take that information so I can send you to the right college for orientation. And I said, yeah, okay, how do I get a major? To her. And she said, oh shoot. Like, you poor thing. College was not like my life plan. I didn't know how to pick a major. I didn't know if that was like something you had to apply to do, or if you could just like say that this is what you're gonna be, or like I literally didn't know how that worked. And so she said, why don't you take this catalog, and I had a copy of it, remember, full color, glossy, I had a copy of it. And she was like, take this catalog, flip through it, you choose one of these colleges, and inside of that college, you choose like basically a specialty, and that's what you study for the next X years of your existence here. And I said, yeah, I can do that. So I take my catalog to the side, and you guys have read the little bio line right now in your program. That's not a lie. I take the catalog and I'm flipping through it, and there was this brand new glass building in the catalog, and there was a big like call out like describing it was a big donation from a family and brand new everything. And all I could think about, I'm 17 years old, and all I could think about was, damn, it's going to be cool to take classes in a glass building. Yes. And so I said, that one, this is my college, to the lady behind the desk. And she's like, engineering? I'm like, I guess. Yes. So that's the story of how I became a computer engineer. And it's not advice. Like, maybe those of you who are counselors, don't tell people this is how you should choose your major. And so I spent the next 6 years, it was a 5.5-year program, but I had a death in the family, so there was a little bit of a hiatus, but spent the next 6 years struggling to what it felt like to get to the starting line. I came from a place where I learned how to type on a typewriter, so that when they introduced me to email, my mind was blown, right? I was like, shoot, like you can send instant messages this way, this is gonna be amazing. Like, I'm gonna keep in touch with everyone. Translation, no one. Email doesn't help you keep in touch, it turns out. So I learned how to use email on my first day of orientation. Somebody who was sitting next to me taught me what a username and password was. And that sort of sets the tone and the stage for what the next 6 years of my life were going to be like. Always trying to catch up, always trying to learn the thing that the affluent white male beside me seemed to have known since from the age of 11. And so I got really good at becoming friends with affluent white males. It's really easy to get a study group together. Like, hey, you guys, you know this already? I'll buy you tacos. So that was college, but the college that I went to, I was really fortunate, and this is like the part where you're starting to see this is a series of accidents. Accidentally went to college, accidentally chose just an amazing life, game-changing major. And then similarly, accidentally got to do all this really fantastic work for all of these really large companies while I was in school. The college that I went to at that time was one of like 12 or 17 colleges in the United States that required that you have 3 different work experience units before you were able to graduate. And work experience to them meant you actually had to go out and be an engineer before they give you the degree to be an engineer. And that was really, really cool and also awful because then you like, there was no interviewing in the fields. Like, that's not how it worked. You know, you show up, you've got your bandana and your water bottle, like you get to work. Not so with engineering. You show up with a bandana, they're going to ask questions. And so I learned how to interview, and I learned about like how to put together a real resume and all of these things, and I worked worked for these really large companies, being a hired gun, essentially, as a computer engineer for the better part of my college existence. And so, had the benefit of having that built into the program that I was in. And those of you who are in vocational ed or tech ed or anything like that, you know the value of having to get right to work, right? Not front-loading a bunch of information, but going out and applying it right away. Gave me this like leg up in the world, and I didn't recognize that. Like I didn't plan for that. That wasn't intentional on my part. It was literally just built into the program. And so I left college, and I ended up coming back to the Central Valley because, like I said before, we had a death in the family, and it was necessary sort of to come back and contribute back to the family, essentially, which is very culturally appropriate. I'm sure that you know. There was a gap. I had skills. I come home, I help fill that gap. That is just exactly what you're expected to do. And so came home, and now I had traveled all over North America being an engineer. And I get to Fresno, and I'm like, this place is actually kind of cool, right? Like, there isn't really a lot wrong with this place that isn't also wrong with Toledo and Knoxville and Memphis and Colorado and all of these other places that I had been by then. Fresno was not different from those things. And so there was a lot that kind of went on. I spent a few years trying to find my place in the world. I had another fortunate accident of being a teacher for a very, very short period of time. And so I worked for a year at the Center for Advanced Research and Technology with my co-teacher at the time, Beth Milley, who I ended up stealing away, got to stand in front of the room in a very, very different way at that time and learn what it was like to teach the students this thing that they did, this very complicated thing that they had no concept of, and what that would feel like, and learned in a short period of time that like I'm not meant to be a teacher. I don't know how you guys do it. You're made out of something else. I think it's like unicorn dust and sainthood. Like instructors. I don't understand you people at all. How do you do it? Come find me after, I need to know. Like I was so blown away how effing hard it was to teach because of the number of masters you're serving at once, right? It's not as simple as break down the thing that you know in your head and impart that information to students. I mean, you've had workshops all day long telling you how, like, it's really not about that. None of the titles of the program that I just looked at said all you have to do is like give them information. It's not what this is about. And so I was just blown away by the difficulty of what it took to be an educator. Luckily, I had Beth Milley at my side, and she sort of helped me not mess that up all the way. But I spent a short period of time doing that, and it became really obvious to me, again, having the benefit of hindsight, that education had and would continue to play this massive role in my life. And it is and was and will always be the game changer that got me to, like I said, be the person behind the microphone today. So spent that time teaching and sort of took that note in my head but didn't quite know what to do with it. So here I am. I'm 27 years old. I have a degree I never thought I would have. I have 7 or 8 years of technology experience and a year of teaching experience that I never thought I would have. I am, by all intents and purposes, qualified to do really cool stuff, and I have no idea what to do with my life. And that was a really dark moment in time for me, because to go to school essentially for free and sort of struggle through that and then not know what to do with that experience was really, really hard. Because you think by then you should have that figured out, and all of those gifts and blessings you've been given, like you should put them to good use. And so this is when things changed for me. I walked into a place that used to be not that far up the road at that time, was called the Central Valley Business Incubator. And I was freelancing for every company inside of that building at the time. It doesn't exist anymore, but it did for a while. It was a neat incubator for startups. And I was freelancing for every business inside of that building. And I go into work one day, and one of the guys asks me, he's like, I can't have the meeting we were supposed to have right now. I have to go pick up my kids. And then I need to feed them and put them down for bed, but I will come back after if you're willing to do an 8 o'clock meeting or 8:30 meeting. Would that be okay with you? And like a cold rush through my body, and I was like, this guy is literally giving everything he's got, all the minutes of his day, to make his dream come true. Like, he's an entrepreneur. He has a startup, and he wants to pour everything he's got into this effort all the way to the point where he's going to go put his kids to bed and come back to work on it just so that he can have the meeting with me. And that was the moment that I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to take all of those years of learning and technology experience and all the teaching experience, and I wanted to use those skills to move other people's businesses forward. Whatever it was, like I don't care if you're opening a dog grooming shop or the next Instagram. Like I can set up your website. Like I can build your website, I can set up your network, I can pull the cables, I can build your technology team, I can be the translator between the nerds and the business people. Like I know how to do these things. That's how I'm gonna spend my life. And it gave me purpose super late in the game, but it was once again, a complete accident. I did not intentionally go into the Central Valley Incubator thinking, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change their lives. The story of going from that moment in time to what Bitwise does today and the way that we go about it at Bitwise, I hope is really clear. Bitwise does three things. We provide an entry point into the industry, into the technology industry, to marginalized people groups, meaning people who never thought that they would have access to this kind of learning and teaching ever in their whole lives. We give them a place to enter into that industry. Technology is the fastest growing industry on the planet. High growth, high wage jobs changes the lives of people who grew up like I did. So that's the first thing we do. We teach people to code. The second thing we do is we create really neat spaces. We buy blighted buildings in downtown Fresno, we rehab them, we lease them back out to technology companies that are hiring out of that academy. And what that does is it creates a bridge between what somebody who's young and scrappy and ambitious might envision the inside of Google looks like right here in Fresno. So you're no longer playing for the junior varsity team because you sit in a cubicle. You're now in one of those aspirational, really cool spaces, and if you want to have a scooter, so help me God, we're gonna find a way to get you a scooter, right? And the third thing we do is really simple. We win world-class work and we bring it back to Fresno so that local developers can work on world-class work in Fresno. With that, what happens is sort of as a byproduct is you create entrepreneurs. People who now get to see the way that work is done at Nike now think to themselves, I've worked on Nike's stuff. I can do my own thing. I can start my own business, and we sort of help them do that. So three simple pillars of business: education, place, and opportunity. Like those are the things. Very, very similar to what you all are doing. It's not a different song that I'm singing from the one that you all sing every single day. We've had some success. The things that really resonate with us in the way that we go about reaching out to those people groups and relating to them, the way that we go about socializing them inside of the buildings, and the way that we put them to work has had some success. We are 5 years old. We've educated about 3,500 students. We've had about 800 technology jobs created in the last 5 years. Brookings Institute tells us that for every technology job you create, there are 4.3 other supportive jobs that are created around that. So we're nearing the 8,000 to 9,000 total jobs created in the last 5 years. Really, really important to us, and to me in particular, is that 50% of those new technology jobs are held by women, 50% of those new technology jobs are held by minorities, and 20% of those new technology jobs are held by first-generation immigrants. We started out in 5,000 square feet in what is called the Mural District in downtown Fresno. We're currently in development for 250,000 square feet. We have the second building open, so if you haven't come down to see it, please do. It's a really neat tour. And we are on pace now to produce between 8 and 10 new technology companies in downtown Fresno in the next 2 years. So it's been a really neat ride. It's been a really neat ride. But when you look back at it, if you look back over the story that I just told you and what I get to do with my life today, which is easily the single best job in the Central Valley, your jobs suck by comparison. To be able to do this all day long, yes, it's intentional now, but it wasn't. And that's the message, right? Is that I went to college, and I chose a major, and I got these jobs, and I started a company, and I get to do really intentional things today, but none of it was intentional then, and that's where you come in. The things that you do now can change that narrative. We can be a lot more deliberate about getting the 6-year-old Latina from Carruthers to view her life in a different way so that when she ends up behind the microphone and creates 8,000 jobs, it's not an accident. And so that's my story, and I really appreciate you listening to it. Your faces tell me that I'm done. And I don't know if we built in time for questions, but I am happy to stick around for as long as you are to answer any of those that you have. So thank you so much.